Caddyshack didn't just become a classic. It became part of the way people talk. The lines are so wired into the culture that they feel less like movie dialogue and more like a shared language. This video brings you 15 facts that will completely change how you see what happened on that Florida golf course. From backstage brawls to a hurricane shutdown, from a gopher that cost $500,000 to scenes that were never in any script. These stories are wilder than the movie itself. Stay until the very end, because the final fact about how this film was actually written is something almost nobody talks about. So speed up with me, because the list starts now. Number 1. The movie that started as something else. Before Caddyshack became a comedy landmark, it was designed to be something deeper. Writers Brian Doyle Murray, Harold Ramis, and Douglas Kenney built a screenplay centered on the caddies, specifically Danny Noonan and Tony D'Annunzio, two teenagers from working-class backgrounds navigating summer jobs at a private country club where the money and social hierarchies were stacked against them. The story drew directly from real life. The Murray brothers had actually worked as caddies at Indian Hill Club in Wilmette, Illinois, and their brother Ed had won a real Chick Evans Caddy scholarship, the same prize Danny chases throughout the film. The adult characters, Ty Webb, Al Chervick, Carl Spackler, were conceived as colorful background figures, comic seasoning at the edges of a story that belonged to the kids. They were never meant to take over. Then cameras rolled, and the plan quietly fell apart. The romantic subplot between Danny and Maggie got cut to almost nothing. The caddy storylines gradually shrank. What the writers had carefully built over months was overtaken, scene by scene, by something none of them had designed or anticipated. Number 2. The name that got it, Greenlit Hollywood, liked the idea of Caddyshack. What it didn't like was the financial risk. Orion Pictures saw a comedy about country club misfits and class collision, found it interesting, but not interesting enough to finance without cover. They had a condition: attach a recognizable movie star whose name could sell tickets before a single frame was shot. Without that, the project stayed on the shelf. That condition brought Chevy Chase aboard. Chase had recently proven his box office pull with the 1978 film Foul Play, and his early SNL fame still carried enormous commercial weight. Once his name was attached, Caddyshack became something the studio could build a release around. With Chase confirmed, the next challenge was casting Al Chervick, the loud, endlessly disruptive millionaire who treats every Bushwood tradition as a punchline. Don Rickles was reportedly considered, but director Harold Ramis caught Rodney Dangerfield on The Tonight Show and made up his mind immediately. That self-deprecating energy, the man who couldn't get any respect, was born for a golf course. It became Dangerfield's first major film appearance. There was a catch. Dangerfield had spent his entire career in nightclubs. He knew how to read a live room in real time. On a film set, the crew stays silent so the audio is usable. After his first few takes, Dangerfield reportedly couldn't understand why nobody was reacting. Someone had to explain that laughter during filming would destroy the sound recording. The man had spent decades building a live connection with audiences, and suddenly that connection was gone on purpose. If you are enjoying this, take 2 seconds and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. That support really motivates my work and helps a lot with bringing more content. Number 3. Two legends who nearly never shared a screen. Bill Murray and Chevy Chase work effortlessly together in Caddyshack. What most people watching that film don't know is that just 2 years before production began, the two men reportedly came to actual blows backstage at Saturday Night Live, in John Belushi's dressing room, minutes before the show went live on national television. The background matters. Chase had left SNL at the height of its early fame to pursue Hollywood, which felt like abandonment to many cast members. Murray was brought in as his replacement. There was already resentment on both sides. When Chase returned as a guest host, the tension cracked. Insults flew. Murray reportedly called Chase a medium talent. Chase responded with something considerably more personal. Then it went past words, and Belushi had to physically separate them so the broadcast could happen. 2 years later, Harold Ramis had both men on the same golf course. Given that history, his original approach was cautious. In the script as written, Carl Spackler and Ty Webb never shared a scene. But Ramis couldn't let it stand. Two of the funniest people alive were on the same set, and audiences would never see them together. He brought both men to lunch, they sketched out a loose concept, and shot it that same afternoon. The result was the shack scene. Carl and Ty talking philosophy with the ease of men who had always understood each other. If you didn't know their history, you'd never guess there was any. Number 4. 6 weeks that looked nothing like a movie set. Filming took place in the fall of 1979 at Rolling Hills Golf Club in Davie, Florida, and by nearly every account, it was unlike anything most participants had experienced. Cast and crew later described the shoot as a sustained celebration, one that went well beyond what any normal film set would recognize as acceptable. Drugs were present and widely acknowledged. Sleep was optional. The script was rarely anyone's top priority. Writer and producer Douglas Kenney was at the center of it. Kenney was genuinely brilliant, a founding creative mind behind National Lampoon and a key architect of Animal House. But during Caddyshack, the excess wasn't just background noise. He was living deep inside it. The same anything-goes energy that freed the performers on camera was accelerating a serious personal decline behind it. Kenney died in August 1980, just months after the film's release at 33. The chaotic atmosphere that helped produce some of the decade's most memorable comedy carried a human cost that never made it near the screen. Number 5. The storm that halted production. Harold Ramis wanted Bushwood to read as a classic Midwestern private club. Manicured fairways, mature oaks, and absolutely no palm trees. He was filming in Florida. Rolling Hills Golf Club in Davie was one of the few courses in the state that fit the visual requirement. Ramis chose it specifically for what it didn't have. As long as cameras stayed pointed in the right directions, the Midwest illusion could hold. Then Hurricane David arrived in early September 1979, just as production was gaining momentum, and shut everything down. The cast and crew moved into a hotel next to the course and waited. By multiple accounts, their response to forced downtime was to throw an extended party, which, given everything else documented about this production, is probably the least surprising development in the entire story. When filming resumed, the schedule was behind, with a cast and crew who had spent the delay adding to the chaos rather than recovering from it. Number 6. The one professional in a room full of wild cards. By the time Ted Knight arrived on set, he had spent years as a respected television actor on The Mary Tyler Moore Show, a production built on tight scripts, precise timing, and a professional standard everyone took seriously. Nothing in that experience prepared him for what he walked into. Knight came from a world where you learned your lines, hit your marks, and worked within the shape of a scene. The rest of the cast operated differently. Dangerfield fired punchlines at the pace of a nightclub performance. Murray reinvented every scene from scratch. Chase improvised with such ease that spontaneity looked like the only sensible approach. Cindy Morgan later recalled Knight standing on set holding his script while Dangerfield ran lines in every direction. Knight's frustration was visible to everyone, but here's the thing, he never broke. He committed fully to Judge Smales in every take. Pompous, perpetually wounded, always one insult away from collapse. In a film built entirely on loose improvisation, Knight was the fixed point the comedy needed to bounce off. Without someone playing it completely straight, Navruna in none of the chaos would have had anywhere to land. Number 7. The pool prank that came from real life. The pool scene, where everyone in the water screams and scrambles for the edge in full-scale panic, wasn't invented for the movie. Co-writer Brian Doyle Murray reportedly pulled a near-identical stunt as a young man. Drop a mysterious object into a crowded pool, watch absolute chaos unfold in real time. The kind of prank that gets funnier every year. In the film, the object is a Baby Ruth candy bar, drifting slowly across the surface with serene menace. But real Baby Ruth bars sink. They don't glide dramatically in slow motion. They go straight to the bottom like a chocolate brick. The solution was a foam replica, shaped and painted to match the real thing, buoyant enough to float exactly the way the shot demanded. The crew used it for the perfect drift. Then, right before Murray takes a bite, they swapped in the actual candy bar. Murray bites without hesitation, in a way that makes completely clear he has never once stopped to consider whether something was food before eating it. A real prank, clever prop work, and Murray's total absence of doubt. One of the decade's most replayed comedy moments. Number 8. The fireball that almost caused a disaster. The finale of Caddyshack ends with a spectacular golf course explosion, the payoff to Carl's entire war against the gopher. It also nearly triggered an emergency response from authorities and air traffic control. Rolling Hills Golf Club sat directly under the flight path of Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. When the effects crew detonated the 18th hole sequence, they were not on a controlled interior stage. They were launching a fireball into the open Florida sky, directly beneath the approach path of incoming commercial aircraft. A pilot spotted the explosion and the column of smoke rising below him. He radioed in immediately, reporting what appeared to be a plane crash. Air traffic control received the alert. Local authorities were notified. For a brief, very real window of time, people believed a disaster had occurred. The country club owners had made the actual 18th green off limits, so the effects team built a large dirt mound specifically for the blast. The charge turned out considerably bigger than anything anyone had briefed the airport about. To manage the shoot, Bill Murray's brother John was reportedly stationed on the course with one assignment: watch the sky and alert the director whenever a plane was on approach so filming could pause. On a production that had already survived a hurricane, a backstage fistfight, and a cast that rewrote the script daily, a man staring at clouds somehow fits perfectly. Before we keep going, subscribe if you haven't yet. Drop a comment telling me which movie or show you want me to cover next with strange, behind-the-scenes facts. I read every single one. Number 9. The small role that took over the movie Carl Spackler was never supposed to matter. When Bill Murray was hired, Carl existed as a near-silent supporting character, background texture in a story that belonged to someone else. The plan was simple. Murray would film his scenes over roughly 6 days and return to Saturday Night Live. That plan lasted until the cameras rolled. Murray brought something to Carl that nobody had written and nobody could contain: a loose, philosophical, completely unpredictable energy that transformed every scene into something larger and stranger than the script described. He played the character as a man who had developed an elaborate, entirely self-consistent worldview through extended solitary time on a golf course. The logic was wrong. The confidence was absolute. That combination was irresistible. The production kept calling Murray back from New York. They wanted more scenes, more material, more Carl. What was designed as a week's work grew into one of the film's defining presences. The character, built to blend quietly into the background, became the one audiences quoted most. Number 10. The young actress who walked away. Sarah Holcomb played Maggie O'Hooligan in Caddyshack. If her face looked familiar in 1980, it was because she'd appeared just 2 years earlier in National Lampoon's Animal House. 2 major studio comedies in 2 years. An extraordinary beginning to any career. Then, she was gone. After Caddyshack, Holcomb left Hollywood completely and permanently. Her entire film career lasted roughly 2 years. Animal House co-writer Chris Miller later noted she had been considerably younger than most people around her on that production, and the late 1970s comedy scene was not known for protecting its youngest performers. She struggled with serious substance abuse and mental illness in the years that followed. Accounts consistently describe both as central factors in her withdrawal from the industry. She was institutionalized for a period before stabilizing and stepping away from Hollywood entirely. As of the mid-2020s, she has lived a private life under a different name for more than 40 years. Every time her name comes up in a Caddyshack conversation, that story is worth pausing on. Number 11. The film critics hated and audiences made immortal. When Caddyshack opened in the summer of 1980, the reviews were not encouraging. Critics called it unfocused and shapeless. The New York Times noted it barely had a coherent story. Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars and wrote that it felt like a series of sketches that never quite connected. Looking honestly at what the production had gone through, the hurricane, the constant rewrites, the last-minute gopher decision, the improvised performances, the criticism wasn't entirely wrong. The movie really was assembled from pieces, but audiences didn't come looking for tight narrative. They came because Murray explained total consciousness with the conviction of someone who had personally worked it all out. They came because Dangerfield could turn any moment into 5 punchlines without slowing down. They came because Chase made effortless, cool look achievable while doing almost nothing. Home video and cable television gave the film time to find its audience. Caddyshack became the kind of movie you came back to, absorbing the lines until they were part of how you talked. Years later, the American Film Institute ranked it number 92 on its list of the 100 funniest American movies ever made. The same film critics once called shapeless had earned a permanent place in the American comedy canon. Number 12. The speech that almost belonged to someone else. The Dalai Lama monologue is one of the most quoted moments in Caddyshack. Carl describes caddying for the spiritual leader on a golf course in Tibet, getting stiffed on a tip and receiving total consciousness as his only reward, delivered with the absolute sincerity of a man certain he came out ahead. It almost never existed in the form you know. The concept existed early in production, and another actor was given the first attempt. The premise should have been inherently funny. A groundskeeper caddying for one of the most revered figures on Earth, walking away with nothing but a vague cosmic promise. In that actor's hands, it wasn't. It landed as sincere and slightly somber, with none of the absurdist confidence the moment needed. Ramis recognized the problem and handed it to Murray. What happened next was pure improvisation. Murray kept the basic premise and built everything else from scratch in Carl's voice. A man completely convinced he'd gotten the better end of the deal and hasn't reconsidered since. Ramis was explicit in later interviews. Everything they filmed with Murray was simply Murray riffing. No scripted dialogue, just instinct and imagination pointed at a camera. Number 13. The film that became a restaurant. Some movies earn a sequel, some get merchandise. Caddyshack earned a full-service restaurant. In 2001, Bill Murray and his 5 brothers, Andy, Brian, Joel, Ed, and John, opened Murray Brothers Caddyshack in St. Augustine, Florida, at the World Golf Village. The concept came from chef Andy Murray and his business partner M. Haskell, who brought the whole family aboard. All 6 brothers signed on as partners, the same brothers who had spent their teenage summers caddying at Indian Hill Club in Wilmette, Illinois, building the experiences that inspired the film in the first place. Andy runs the kitchen, serving American comfort food with a Chicago sensibility. The walls are covered in Caddyshack memorabilia, and the atmosphere is designed to feel like an extension of the Murray family itself. When the World Golf Hall of Fame closed in 2023, many fans assumed the restaurant had gone with it. It hadn't. Andy Murray and M. Haskell signed a new 10-year lease in 2024 and kept on serving. A second location in Rosemont, Illinois, opened in 2018 and closed permanently in July 2025. The original Florida flagship remains open, still going more than 2 decades after it first opened. A movie about a summer job turned into a business that outlasted the golf hall it was built beside. Quick reminder to subscribe if you are enjoying these revelations. And tell me in the comments, do you know any strange fact about this movie that I didn't mention? Let's build the list together. Number 14, the $500,000 afterthought. The gopher was not supposed to be the gopher. In the original screenplay, the creature appeared in a single scene. A minor pest problem for the groundskeeper, nothing more. Then filming wrapped, and the producers sat down with the assembled cut. The movie had funny moments. What it didn't have was a clear center, something to connect the pieces and give the comedy a consistent pulse. The producers decided the answer was already on screen. That one gopher scene would become the film's connective tissue, a recurring presence, Carl's nemesis, the thread running through the whole picture. To execute it, they brought in effects specialists with connections to John Dykstra, the Oscar-winning designer behind the visual effects of Star Wars. Now check this out. The same technical lineage that created lightsabers and X-Wing fighters was being redirected toward an animatronic rodent on a Florida golf course. The puppet itself cost around $5,000, but by the time the production added new scenes, tunnel sequences, and all the effects worked to make it feel like a real character, the total investment climbed to roughly $500,000. Star Wars technology in the service of a dancing gopher. Hollywood at its most extravagant, building a character in post-production that had never existed in the script, almost at the end, and the best is still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and drop your city or country in the comments. I want to see how far this video is reaching. Number 15. The movie that wrote itself here is the most remarkable fact about Caddyshack, and the one almost nobody brings up when they talk about why this film works. The movie that audiences have been quoting for over 40 years barely had a script. 3 writers spent 3 months building a 200-page screenplay. Not once in those 200 pages did the name Carl Spackler appear. The character didn't exist on paper. Then 3 comedians walked onto a Florida golf course and rewrote the movie in real time. And most of what they invented stayed in the final cut. Start with Dangerfield. His very first scene was Al's entrance in the pro shop. Ramis called action. Dangerfield stood still. Ramis tried again. Still nothing. Ramis walked over and explained the cue. Dangerfield listened, then asked simply whether he should do his bit. Ramis said yes. Dangerfield nailed the take completely, including the line about a hat deserving a free bowl of soup, made up entirely on the spot. From that moment forward, Ramis never said action for a Dangerfield scene again. The dinner sequence where Al strolls past Judge Smails' table, insulting every guest, Dangerfield channeling 40 years of stand-up directly at the camera. None of it scripted. Murray went even further. The Cinderella story sequence had exactly 2 lines of stage direction in the screenplay. Carl cuts flowers with a grass whip. That was it. No dialogue, no beats. Ramis pulled Murray aside, asked him to imagine he was calling his own performance at a major sporting event, then stepped back entirely. Murray picked up the whip, looked at a bed of chrysanthemums, and started talking. Those were living flowers. Once the petals hit the ground, they were gone. He went for roughly 30 minutes in a single continuous take before anyone stopped him. What audiences know is what survived the editing room. That scene, built from 2 lines of direction, 1 prompt, and Murray's completely unguarded imagination, became one of the most repeated comedy bits of the past 4 decades. The film that audiences have quoted for 40 years was never really written. It was discovered on a golf course in Florida by people too good at what they did to stick to the page. Outrow. And those were 15 strange facts about Caddyshack. A film that started as a coming-of-age story, survived a hurricane and a backstage fistfight, spent $500,000 building a gopher, and ended up with its most beloved scenes never appearing in any script. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. And it keeps working, because the people on that golf course were too talented and too unpredictable for any script to fully contain them. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe, and comment which fact surprised you the most. Don't forget to suggest another movie that deserves a list of strange facts. See you in the next video.